Hello everybody, and welcome back to Game Review. Today on Game Review, I wanted to go over a game by a chess player from the mid-20th century. Of course, I'm going over a game of Salomon Flohr. In this game, Flohr took on a player by the name of Salo Landau, and it is honestly a wild game, and I wanted to take you guys through it here. So Flohr played the move d4. Landau responded with the move knight f6. Then we have c4, c6. And this is a pretty interesting way to transpose into the Slav defense. It does avoid some specific things, and it does grant black some extra options depending on the line. For example, if white tries to play the move bishop f4 here, well, you might run into d5, and if c takes d5, sorry, you might not run into d5. d5 is what you might expect, but black actually does have an extra option to play the move queen b6 here. And these lines get a little bit interesting. We had none of that funny business today though, just knight f3, and now after d5, we transpose into a normal Slav structure. White chose the quiet variation with the move e3, and there's actually a lot of different ways that this can go from here for white. A lot of different ways for white to play. In the game, he kind of took a more conservative approach. Flohr just says after e6, he's going to be happy developing these pieces one at a time. Knight bd2, bishop e7, bishop d3, knight bd7. We have castles and castles. And now Flohr just plays the move b3. He's going to get this bishop out to b2. And he's happy with this nice little structure that he constructed here with all of his pieces having very natural squares to go to. So in the game, his opponent Landau decided now was the time to break with the move c5. And whenever you see all of these pawns kind of stuck together on the queen side like this, you can expect some very specific pawn structures to kind of arise. From these positions, you can get a variety of structures, one of which, for example, if we see takes and takes, would be the classic isolated queen's pawn structure. This is one option. You might also just see all the pawns blow up like this. This is another option. You might also see white ignore this tension as he did in the game with bishop b2. And from there, you can get what's known as the hanging pawn structure after takes and takes. These two pawns are known as hanging pawns. Of course, in this case, hanging does not mean that they are, en prise or anything, that they can be captured. It means they're kind of hanging together. There's no pawns on either of the files surrounding these pawns. And so these pawns are kind of out on their own, hanging out together, and they will be trying to defend each other. And it's a pretty common structure from positions like these. In general, when these pawns are standing right next to each other, it is going to be a pretty nice structure for white. Just for example, if white ever had to play a move like c5, all of a sudden, the structure is a lot less comfortable for white because now you do get left with a slightly backward pawn. If there weren't already immediate tactical problems with it, you would just rather have these pawns kind of next to each other for the moment, guarding a lot of squares. In the game, black plays the move b6, which does a nice job of controlling the squares in front of the pawns. Now queen c2 by white, and we kind of start to see the advantage of having these hanging pawns. While they can be attacked by the opponent, they do control a lot of central squares here. And with this slight edge in central space, white is going to try and launch an initiative actually on the king side. Bishop b7, and now white does in fact make use of this extra space that he has by playing the move knight to e5. Now in the game, black played the move queen to c7, and in this position, I would like you guys at home to stop, take a second, and try to figure out how you can best continue here with white. There's one move in particular that I think really does allow white to play for an advantage with a very strong initiative. Okay, hopefully you got it. That move, of course, is the move f4. This is the move that starts launching the kingside attack in full force. It supports this knight on e5, and it even prepares to start thinking about opening the f-file and getting this rook into the game. Now from here, black played the move rook f to d8. Black is looking for counterplay against these central pawns. Of course, they're not defended by any other pawns, and so they can be attacked. They can be viewed as a slight weakness, and that's how Black is playing for counterplay against Flohr. In this case, though, knight d to f3 by Flohr, just bringing more pieces into the attack. h6 is how Black chose to respond, trying to keep an eye on this g5 square, also removing this pawn from any threat of capture by this bishop sitting here on d3. In the game, Flohr plays very, very calmly, very naturally, this is kind of the meat of attacking chess, right? Like, everybody loves the flashy sacrifices, but it's moves in positions like these that set up the attack that are really where the best attacking players shine. And so you see, so far, Flohr just plays very, very natural moves. He just starts bringing more pieces over to the king side, and he continues doing that here. This queen, it's fine on c2, but it's even better on e2, when it can jump to squares like e4, jump out to squares on the king side at a later date, and help support e5 as well. It's moves like queen e2 that are really the thing that defines a strong attacking player. These moves setting up the attack. The move knight takes e5 was now played by the opponent, Landau, and after f takes e5, white really does have a very, very strong advantage here. The move knight d7 comes on the board, and now once again, I'd like you guys at home to pause for a moment, try and find the best way to continue with white. There is one move in particular that really starts opening things up, starts crushing the opponent immediately. Flohr played all these nice preparatory moves, bringing the queen over, bringing the knight over, opening up the f file, but now is the time to open things up. Time to go get the opponent. Okay, hopefully you found it. That move, of course, is this move, d5. d5, a really, really killer blow, starting to break down this structure on the king side. Of course, if you dare to capture this pawn, you're going to be met with this move, e6. And this is just going to be devastating for you. If you capture this pawn, queen takes e6 is actually just going to be checkmate in 3 with queen f7 mate, or if you prefer bishop g6 mate, or if you prefer queen g6 mate. So you absolutely cannot capture this pawn. If you try a little bit harder, you still end up getting destroyed by this pawn on f7. So no takes on d5 for Black. Instead, bishop c5 check is his choice. Now king h1, e takes d5 is played now. And once again, it is white to move and win. Now, there are a few ways, or actually maybe just a couple ways to win here for white, but I really like the move that white came up with in the game. It's just absolutely crushing, and it's a very, very, very beautiful move. Okay, hopefully you guys at home came up with some stuff here. Of course, the move e6 is going to be winning in this position as well. I believe this was white's initial idea, and it does still hold true here. And, e6 probably would have been beautiful enough to make for a notable game. The game could continue with knight f8, and then, you can play any number of moves, knight e5 even, and after takes, for example, takes on f7, and you're just kind of getting crushed. But the move played in the game is even fancier than that. Rather than playing e6 immediately, Flohr actually plays this move, knight g5. And this is just such a beautiful move. You just place this knight entirely on crease. Of course, it might not be totally necessary because e6 is winning. But usually when you see a knight sacrifice like this, the point is the fact that, you're opening up some h file, right? You have a pawn on h4, you open up the h file, and your rook comes into play. In this case, it is just purely a clearance sacrifice. If you capture this knight, you're going to get met with e6 now. And now no matter what you play, queen h5 is going to be devastating. For example, the move d4, we do not play e takes f7 here, but rather just playing queen to h5 immediately. And these are just unstoppable threats by white. If you take on g2, this might be your only hope. Hoping for king takes g2 when queen c6 might actually save you, but just king g1 from white is the refutation to this idea. It's just really incredible stuff here. In the game, Black unfortunately did not capture this knight, allowing all these beautiful lines. Instead, the side bonus of knight g5 besides, allowing your knight to be captured, is you do attack this pawn on f7, and black simply allowed white to crash through on the f7 square. But really, all the crazy fun lines come after h takes g5 here. Against anything else, the f7 pawn is just hanging. But yeah, h takes g5, e6, and now this threat of queen h5 is just going to be unstoppable. If knight f8, still e takes f7 now, and queen h5. Just cannot stop this threat. There's no way in. In the game though, knight f8, now knight takes f7 is good, rook e8, queen up to g4, continues the attack quite nicely. Rook up to e6 is trying to defend, but now the move bishop f5 hits this guy. Rook over to e8 is sacrificing some material. We just take it with the white pieces and go knight d6. And this game is just pretty much over at this point. Not a ton that black can do here to get back into the game. He tried trading off this powerful knight, but after e takes d6 and queen d7, of course, if you capture this guy, you run into checkmate. If you capture this guy like this, you run into bishop e5. So queen d7 forced by black. Now bishop a3 defends this powerful pawn, knight up to h7, and now just the calm h3. White is up in exchange here, has a powerful d6 pawn. He knows his position is winning, so he just takes the time to play some knights improving moves. D takes c4, queen takes c4, now knight up to f6, and now another fun move by white here. Not content to settle for, his current winning position, he sacrifices the exchange back with rook takes f6, just because. G takes f6 now, and the move rook e1 is quite nice, hitting this guy. Bishop c8, the only real move to stay in the game here. If you play the move king f7, you're going to get met with rook takes e6, queen takes e6, queen c7 check, picking up this bishop. So bishop c6, or c8 instead. Now rook back over to c1, bishop b7. We see a rook g4 check, king h8, and now after rook c7, the game is actually going to be over. Rook e1 is check, king h2, but after queen takes g4, forced due to all this pressure, h takes g4, this bishop is hanging, and this pawn is promoting, and there's no way to stop both threats. For example, you save the bishop, d7, rook d1, bishop e7, and queening will be coming. So this was a very impressive game by Flohr. I had a lot of fun going over this one. The move knight g5 is just such a beautiful move. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun going over it today on Game Review. Once again, my name is Denby. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you next time.